Wu stood at the massive window of the palace, watching the violet seas churn beneath the floating structure. He had been in space for 3 months, but nothing prepared him for this moment. Earth's first real contact with an alien empire, and he was part of it. The palace was unlike anything humans had ever built. It seemed to be made of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. The walls changed colors based on the emotions of the nearby. Right now, everything glowed a cool blue, which his briefing materials said meant curiosity mixed with caution. "Translator Wu, they are ready for you." The voice came from Ambassador Yang, a stern man in his 50s who led Earth's delegation. Yang looked tired. The negotiations had been going on for 2 weeks and progress was slow. Wu followed the ambassador through corridors that seemed to shift and reshape themselves. They were telepathic, which meant they could read each other's minds. But human minds were different. They couldn't read human thoughts, which made them both fascinated and nervous around people from Earth. The throne room was enormous. Hundreds of floated in the air, their translucent wings catching the light. They were beautiful creatures, tall and graceful, with skin that glowed from within. Their faces were almost human, but their eyes were larger and completely silver. On the central platform sat Emperor, a being so ancient that his wings had turned from transparent to a deep gold. Beside him stood several figures, but Wu's attention was caught by one in particular. She was younger than the others, perhaps equivalent to a human in her 20s. Her wings were still bright and clear, and her skin glowed with a soft purple light. She was looking directly at him, which was unusual. Most avoided eye contact with humans. "This is Princess," High Chancellor Al announced in perfect English. They had learned human languages quickly, though they found them crude. "She has been assigned to learn about your species. You will teach her." Wu bowed as he had been instructed. "It would be my honor, Your Highness." The princess didn't respond. She simply continued to stare at him with those silver eyes. Wu felt like she was trying to read his mind, even though he knew it was impossible. The formal ceremony lasted 3 hours. They spoke about the great honor they were giving humanity by allowing them into their empire. They used words like partnership and mutual benefit, but Wu could read between the lines. Earth would be a junior member, expected to follow rules without question. Ambassador Yang smiled and nodded through it all. Earth needed this alliance. Humanity had only been in space for 50 years. They had been traveling the stars for thousands. Finally, the ceremony ended. Wu was shown to a small room where he would meet with Princess for daily lessons. The room was simple by standards, which meant it was still more luxurious than anything on Earth. The princess arrived exactly on time. She moved with perfect grace, her feet barely touching the floor. "Sit," she said. It wasn't a request. Wu sat on one of the strange chairs that adjusted to his body shape. "What would you like to learn about first, Your Highness?" "Everything," she replied. "But we will start with something simple. Explain to me why humans lie." The question caught him off guard. "I'm sorry." "Humans lie to each other. We have observed this. Among my people, lies are impossible. Our thoughts are open. So why do humans hide the truth?" Wu thought carefully before answering. This was clearly a test. Sometimes we lie to protect others. Sometimes we lie to protect ourselves. And sometimes we lie because the truth is complicated. Truth cannot be complicated. Truth is truth. "With respect, Your Highness, I disagree. What if the truth would hurt someone you love? What if telling the truth would cause more harm than good?" Princess tilted her head, a gesture that seemed almost bird-like. "Interesting. You believe that harm can come from knowledge." "Yes, don't you?" "No, among my people all knowledge is shared. There are no secrets. There is no privacy. We are united in thought and purpose." Wu felt a chill run down his spine. The idea of everyone knowing his thoughts all the time was terrifying. That sounds difficult. "It is perfection," the princess said. but something in her voice made Wu wonder if she truly believed that. They continued talking for 2 hours. Princess asked questions about human culture, human history, and human emotions. She seemed particularly interested in conflict. They had no wars among themselves because telepathy made it impossible to form opposing factions. "But doesn't anyone ever disagree with the emperor?" Wu asked. The princess's glow dimmed slightly. "That question is inappropriate." "I apologize, I didn't mean to offend." "You did not offend. You simply asked something that we do not ask." She stood, preparing to leave. "Our next meeting will be tomorrow at the same time." That evening there was a formal banquet. All the human delegates attended, dressed in their finest clothes. The served food that had been specially prepared for human digestion, though it tasted strange. Wu sat between Ambassador Yang and a human scientist named Bora. The conversation was polite and boring. Everyone was being careful not to say anything that might upset their hosts. Then disaster struck. A servant accidentally spilled a drink on Bora's dress. The liquid was bright green and smelled awful. Bora jumped up with a yelp. Without thinking, Wu said, "Well, that's just perfect." The room went silent. Everyone in the hall turned to stare at him. High Chancellor Al rose from his seat. "What did you say?" Wu realized his mistake. He had used sarcasm, a form of communication that didn't exist in culture. To them, his words meant he actually thought the situation was perfect, which made no sense. "I apologize, it's a human expression. I meant the opposite of what I said." "You meant words to convey their opposite." The Chancellor looked horrified. "This is the chaos of your species, words that mean nothing, thoughts that hide other thoughts." Ambassador Yang quickly stood. "Please forgive my colleague, he is still learning your customs." But Princess was smiling. It was a small smile, barely visible, but Wu saw it. Her eyes met his across the room, and in that moment he understood something important. She wasn't bored by his mistake, she was fascinated. The banquet ended early. Ambassador Yang pulled Wu aside in the corridor. "You need to be more careful. One wrong word could destroy everything we're trying to build here." "I understand, Ambassador. It won't happen again." But as Wu walked back to his quarters, he couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. Princess had seen him break a rule, and instead of being offended, she had been intrigued. He wondered what that meant. The next morning, Wu woke to find a message waiting for him. It was from Princess, written in careful English. "I wish to learn more about words that mean their opposite. Come to the royal gardens after morning meal." Wu stared at the message for a long time. This was dangerous territory. They had strict rules about language and communication. Teaching the princess about sarcasm and irony could be seen as corrupting her. But he also saw an opportunity. If Princess truly wanted to understand humans, she needed to understand how they really communicated, not just the polite words they used in formal settings. He sent back a simple reply, "I will be there." As he prepared for the day, Wu couldn't help but feel that he was standing at the edge of something important. The thought they understood humans, but they didn't. Not really. They saw the surface but missed the depth. Princess seemed to sense that there was more to learn. Wu just hoped that teaching her wouldn't start a war. The royal gardens were nothing like gardens on Earth. Instead of soil and plants, there were floating crystal formations that grew like trees, reaching toward the artificial sun above. Small creatures that looked like butterflies made of light danced between the branches. The air smelled sweet, like honey mixed with rain. Princess was waiting for him on a platform that overlooked the violet sea. She wore simpler robes than the formal attire from the throne room, and her wings were folded against her back. "You came," she said without turning around. "You summoned me, Your Highness." "Stop calling me that when we are alone." She finally looked at him. "My name is Use It." Wu hesitated. Using a royal's personal name without permission was forbidden, but she had just given him permission. "All right, what did you want to learn today?" She gestured for him to sit on a bench made of smooth stone. "Teach me the words your people speak when rules do not matter." "I'm not sure I understand." "Last night you spoke words that meant their opposite. This fascinated me. Among my people, such a thing is impossible. We cannot hide meaning because our thoughts are shared. But you can. Your words can carry hidden meanings, layers that must be interpreted." Wu chose his words carefully. "What you're asking about is called sarcasm, or irony, sometimes humor. These are ways humans communicate that go beyond the literal meaning of words." "Show me." For the next hour, Wu taught her about the subtle ways humans twisted language. He explained how tone of voice could change meaning, how context mattered, how the same word could mean different things to different people. Absorbed everything like a student who had been starving for knowledge, she asked questions that cut to the heart of each concept. Why did humans need these hidden layers? What purpose did they serve? "It's about freedom," Wu finally said. "Sometimes you need to say something without really saying it. Maybe because someone in power is listening. Maybe because the direct truth is too painful. Language that can mean multiple things gives you room to maneuver." Was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was soft. "I envy you." "Envy me? You're a princess of the most powerful empire in this sector of space." "I am a prisoner of my own mind." She stood and walked to the edge of the platform. "You cannot understand what it is like. From the moment I wake until I sleep, I am connected to my people. Every thought I have, every feeling is shared with the collective. There are no private thoughts, no secret dreams. I am part of something larger and I can never be separate from it." Wu joined her at the edge. "That sounds lonely." "Yes." She turned to him with surprise in her silver eyes. "No one has ever understood that before. My people say it is beautiful, this connection we share. And it is. But it is also a cage." Over the next several days, their lessons continued. Proved to be a brilliant student. She learned colloquial phrases, slang, and even mild profanity. She seemed particularly delighted by words that had no direct translation into the language. "What does this mean?" she asked one day, pointing to a phrase Wu had written down. "It means I don't care what others think. I'm going to do it anyway." We have no word for this concept. The idea of not caring what the collective thinks is, she paused, searching for words. It is both terrifying and thrilling. But their private lessons couldn't remain secret forever. Ambassador Yang started asking questions about what they discussed. High Chancellor Al watched them with suspicion whenever they were in the same room. "You need to be careful," Yang warned Wu one evening. "The negotiations are at a critical stage. They are offering us access to their trade networks, their technology, their protection. But they can withdraw the offer at any moment." "I'm just teaching her about our language and culture, like I was assigned to do." "You're teaching her too well. She's starting to ask questions that make the Emperor uncomfortable. Questions about individual choice, about disagreement, about privacy." Wu felt a surge of defensiveness. Shouldn't she be allowed to ask questions? "Not those questions. The society is built on unity and collective thought. If you introduce concepts that challenge that foundation, you could destabilize their entire civilization." "Or maybe," Wu said quietly, "they need to be challenged." Yang's expression hardened. "That is not our decision to make. We are guests here. More than that, we are supplicants. Earth needs this alliance. Do not forget that." But Wu couldn't stop thinking about what it said. She was trapped in a system that gave her no choice, no privacy, no freedom to be different. And she was supposed to just accept it because that was how things had always been. The next day led him deeper into the gardens than they had gone before. They reached a small grove where the crystal trees grew so thick that they blocked the view of the palace. "This is the only place where the collective cannot easily reach me," she explained. "The crystals interfere with telepathic signals. I come here when I need to think thoughts that are only mine. I'm glad you have this place." She sat on the ground, which was completely unlike her usual regal bearing. "Wu, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Of course. Is your society better than ours?" The question hung in the air between them. It was the kind of question that could destroy diplomatic relations if answered wrong. "I can't answer that," Wu said slowly. "Better for whom? Your society has achieved things humans can only dream of. You have peace, unity, technological marvels, but you've given up things that humans consider essential: privacy, the freedom to disagree, the right to be wrong." "The right to be wrong," repeated. "We have no such concept. Among my people, wrongness is corrected immediately through the collective. If one person has a mistaken thought, the others correct it. There is no room for error." "But doesn't that mean there's no room for growth, for discovery? Some of humanity's greatest achievements came from people who were told they were wrong but kept trying anyway." Looked at him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "Teach me how to say no." "I'm sorry. In my language, we have no word for refusing something. If the collective decides something, it is done. There is no dissent, but I have been reading human histories that you gave me access to. Your people say no to authority all the time. They rebel. They refuse. They fight for what they believe is right, even when everyone else disagrees." Wu felt a cold knot form in his stomach. This was exactly what Ambassador Yang had warned him about. "I'm not sure this is something I should teach you." "Why not? Is it forbidden?" "It's complicated. In human society, saying no is important. It's how we protect ourselves, how we maintain our dignity. But in your society, saying no to the collective could be seen as betrayal." "Perhaps my society needs to learn about betrayal." She stood abruptly. "For centuries, we have existed in perfect harmony. We have expanded our empire, brought order to dozens of species. But we have not changed. We have not grown. We are exactly as we were 1,000 years ago because change requires disagreement, and disagreement is impossible in a telepathic collective." "What are you saying?" She turned to face him fully. "I am saying that meeting your species has shown me something I never knew was missing. You humans are chaotic. You fight among yourselves. You make mistakes. You fail constantly. And yet you continue to progress, to evolve, to become something new. We have achieved perfection, and perfection cannot change." "Perfection is a cage," Wu said softly. "Yes," she moved closer to him. "So teach me how to say no, teach me how to be imperfect, teach me how to be free." Wu knew this was a turning point. If he refused, would remain trapped in her perfect prison. If he agreed, he might unleash forces that could shake the foundation of society. He thought about Ambassador Yang's warnings, about Earth's need for this alliance, about all the practical, sensible reasons to refuse. Then he thought about the look in his eyes, the desperate hunger for something different, for choice. "All right," he said, "but you need to understand something first. Freedom is dangerous. It means you can make wrong choices. It means you can fail. It means you can be alone." "I already feel alone," said quietly. "Surrounded by 1 billion connected minds, and I feel completely alone because none of them can understand what I'm feeling." So Wu taught her. He taught her how to form words of refusal in multiple human languages. He taught her about civil disobedience, about peaceful protest, about standing up for what you believe even when everyone thinks you're wrong. And as he taught her, he realized something. They weren't really telepathic in the way humans understood it. Their minds were connected, yes, but that connection was enforced by cultural pressure, by ancient technology, by tradition. They had built a society where individual thought was automatically suppressed before it could fully form. Was fighting against thousands of years of conditioning. And she was doing it because she had met someone from a species that valued chaos over order, freedom over security, individual rights over collective harmony. "Thank you," she said as the lesson ended. "I know you are taking a great risk." "We both are," Wu replied. As he walked back to his quarters that evening, Wu couldn't shake the feeling that he had just lit a fuse. He didn't know when it would explode or what the consequences would be. He only knew that it was too late to put out the fire. The Grand Council chamber was filled to capacity. Every important in the empire had gathered for this moment. The chamber itself was massive, with a ceiling that seemed to stretch into infinity. The walls displayed images of conquered worlds, species that had joined the empire over the. Wu stood with the other human delegates, wearing formal attire that felt stiff and uncomfortable. Ambassador Yang stood beside him, looking proud and nervous. This was the moment they had been working toward for months, the day Earth would officially become part of the empire. Junior partnership was the term they used, but everyone knew what it really meant. Earth would provide resources and soldiers. They would provide technology and protection. It wasn't equal, but it was better than being alone in a hostile galaxy. Emperor sat on his throne at the center of the chamber, his golden wings spread wide. High Chancellor Al stood at his right hand, reading from a holographic document that listed all the terms of the agreement. The terms were extensive. Earth would adopt law. Earth would accept oversight of its military. Earth would limit its expansion to systems approved by the Empire. In exchange, humanity would receive technology that was centuries ahead of anything they could develop on their own. "Does the human delegation accept these terms?" the Chancellor asked. Ambassador Yang stepped forward. "We do, with gratitude and humility. Then we require only the ceremonial blessing from the royal family to make this binding." The Chancellor gestured toward Princess, who stood near her father's throne. Wu watched as moved to the speaking platform. She looked different today. Her usual grace seemed forced. Her glow was dimmer than normal. The ceremony was simple, was supposed to touch the document with her mind, linking her consciousness briefly with all the present. This would create a collective memory of the agreement, making it binding under their ancient laws. But didn't touch the document. Instead, she raised her hand, and the telepathic connection that usually bound all together seemed to shimmer and break. It was like watching a spider's web snap. Every in the chamber gasped. "I will not bless this agreement," said. The chamber erupted. Voices rose in confusion and anger. Emperor stood from his throne, his face showing an emotion that rarely displayed in public. Shock. But wasn't finished. She turned to face the entire assembly and did something that no royal had ever done in recorded history. She spoke in English. "These terms are unjust," she said, her accent perfect, her words clear. "This is not partnership. This is subjugation dressed in polite language." High Chancellor Al's skin flashed red with anger. "You dare to use the primitive language in this sacred chamber. You dare to break the collective bond." "Yes, I dare." His voice grew stronger. "Because this language allows me to say things that our language cannot express. We have no word for unjust because the collective decides what is just, and the collective is always correct. But what if the collective is wrong?" The chamber fell silent. Even the humans were too stunned to move. Emperor descended from his throne. "Daughter, you have been corrupted by these aliens. This is not you speaking." "You are right, father. This is not the me you created. This is not the me that the collective shaped and molded and controlled. This is the me that I choose to be." Turned to the holographic document and began to read aloud, translating each term into English, and then explaining what it really meant in language that cut through the diplomatic nonsense. Article 7 states that Earth must provide military forces for imperial defense. What it means is that human soldiers will die in wars they did not choose, for reasons they will not be told. Article 12 states that Earth's cultural development will be guided by advisors. What it means is that humanity will slowly be erased, replaced with a copy of our culture. Article 23 states that Earth's expansion is subject to imperial approval. What it means is that humanity will never be allowed to grow beyond what we permit. With each translation, the human delegates looked more uncomfortable. Ambassador Yang's face had gone pale. These were the terms he had agreed to, terms he had praised as generous. High Chancellor Al pointed at Wu. "This is your doing. You poisoned her mind with your chaos." "No," said sharply. "He taught me to think for myself. There is a difference." She continued speaking, and Wu realized she was quoting human philosophers, people like End, activists who had fought against oppression. She used their words to argue that all sapient species deserved equal treatment, not hierarchy based on who had conquered space first. Then she did something even more shocking. She used sarcasm. "Of course, we are so enlightened that we would never oppress anyone. We just happen to control every aspect of their government, their military, their culture, and their expansion. But we call it partnership, so it must be fine." They were completely unprepared for this. Sarcasm didn't exist in their culture. Many of them took her words literally at first, then realized from her tone that she meant the opposite. The confusion on their faces would have been funny if the situation wasn't so serious. Emperor looked at his daughter with something that might have been pain. "You mock our ways. You reject our unity. What would you have us do instead?" "Treat them as equals," said simply. "Not as subjects, not as junior partners, as equals." "They are not our equals. We have traveled the stars for thousands of years while they have barely left their home system. And yet they have something we do not," gestured to the human delegates. "They have diversity of thought. They have disagreement. They have the ability to say no to their leaders without being seen as traitors. They have freedom." "Freedom is chaos," High Chancellor Al said. "It is inefficient. It leads to conflict and war." "Yes," agreed. "And it also leads to growth, to change, to evolution. We have not changed in 1,000 years. We have stagnated. We have achieved perfection, and perfection cannot improve." She turned back to her father. "These humans taught me something important. They taught me that being wrong is not the end of the world. They taught me that failure is how you learn. They taught me that sometimes the most important thing you can do is refuse." "And what are you refusing, daughter?" "I refuse to be part of a system that treats sentient beings as lesser. I refuse to accept that tradition is more important than justice. I refuse to stay silent when I see something wrong, even if the entire collective disagrees with me." Emperor looked at his daughter for a long moment. Then he looked at the human delegates. Then he looked at all the gathered in the chamber. "You speak of equality," he said finally, "but equality requires trust. How can we trust a species we cannot read, whose thoughts are hidden from us?" Smiled, and it was the first time Wu had seen her smile in public. "That is exactly the point, father. Trust that is forced through telepathy is not real trust. Real trust is choosing to believe in someone even when you cannot see into their mind." High Chancellor Al stepped forward. "Emperor, this is madness. If we accept her arguments, we undermine the very foundation of our empire. We cannot allow this." But something was changing in the chamber. Some of the younger were glowing brighter. Their wings were spreading. They were listening to words and finding something that resonated with them. One young stepped forward. His name was En, and he was a low-ranking diplomat. "Princess speaks truth that we have been afraid to acknowledge. I have worked with 7 different species in our empire. None of them are happy. They serve us because they must, not because they want to." Another spoke up. Then another. Within moments, dozens of voices were calling out, sharing thoughts that they had kept hidden from the collective. Emperor raised his hand, and silence fell. "This will require deliberation. The council will meet in private session to discuss these matters." No, said firmly. No more private sessions. No more collective decisions made without dissent. If you are going to discuss the fate of Earth and the future of our empire, do it here, in front of everyone. The Emperor's wings flared, a sign of deep emotion. You ask me to abandon thousands of years of tradition. I ask you to choose growth over stagnation, change over perfection, justice over convenience. Wu held his breath. The entire chamber seemed frozen in time. This was the moment that would decide everything. High Chancellor Al broke the silence. If you do not stop this madness, Emperor, I will take this matter to the Elder Council. They will remove you from power and install someone who understands the importance of maintaining order. Is that a threat, Chancellor? It is a promise. This empire was built on unity. We cannot allow one corrupted princess and a species of primitives to destroy what we have built. Turn to face the Chancellor. You call us corrupted. You call them primitives, but you are afraid. I can see it even without telepathy. You are afraid because you know that if our people start thinking for themselves, they might not choose to follow leaders like you. The Chancellor's skin flashed red again. Guards, arrest the human translator. He is to be charged with corrupting a member of the royal family. Armed guards moved toward Wu. Ambassador Yang tried to step in front of him, but the guards pushed him aside. Then Princess did something that would be remembered in history forever. She positioned herself between Wu and the guards. If you imprison him, she said quietly, her voice carrying across the silent chamber, you imprison the very concept of free thought. Are we so afraid of ideas that we must lock them away? The guards stopped, unsure what to do. A royal was blocking their path. To move her would require force, and using force against royalty was unthinkable. Emperor looked at his daughter standing there, defending a human against her own people. For the first time since Wu had met him, the Emperor looked uncertain. What would you have me do? He asked softly. Wu paced in his quarters, which had become his prison. Guards stood outside his door. He could go nowhere without permission. The palace security had locked down all communication systems, so he couldn't contact Earth or even the other human delegates. 3 days had passed since the incident in the Grand Council chamber. 3 days of silence and uncertainty. Ambassador Yang had visited once briefly. His face was grim, his voice cold. You've destroyed everything we worked for, he said. Earth was going to join the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Now we're lucky if they don't declare war on us. I was just doing my job, Wu replied, teaching her about our culture. You taught her rebellion. You taught her to question authority. You taught her to destroy the very foundation of their society. Yang shook his head. Do you know what the political situation is like back home? Half the government wants to send you home in chains. The other half wants to abandon you here and pretend you never existed. After Yang left, Wu was alone with his thoughts. He wondered what had happened too. Were they punishing her, trying to reconnect her to the collective by force? He had no way of knowing. On the 4th day, something changed. A young slipped into his room through a service entrance that Wu hadn't even known existed. This name was N, the same diplomat who had spoken up during the council session. I don't have much time, N said quickly. The princess asked me to bring you this. He handed Wu a small crystal that glowed with soft light. When Wu touched it, words appeared in his mind. It was a message from. They have confined me to the royal chambers. Father is torn between love for me and duty to the empire. The Chancellor is gathering support to remove both of us from power. But there are others who support what I said. Young who have been questioning the old ways but had no words to express their doubts. You gave me those words and I gave them to my people. Whatever happens next, thank you for showing me that there is another way to live. Wu looked at him. Can you take a message back to her? Yes, but quickly. Tell her this. Tell her that change is always frightening to those in power. Tell her that the greatest act of courage is standing up for what you believe even when you're alone, and tell her she's not alone anymore. And nodded and slipped away as quietly as he had come. Over the next few days, more visited in secret. They came one or two at a time, moving through passages that the guards didn't watch. Each one brought news or messages. From them, Wu learned the truth about society that had been hidden from the human delegates. The empire was not as unified as it appeared. There were dozens of subject species, some of whom had been conquered centuries ago. Most served quietly, but there was resentment beneath the surface. The maintained control through a combination of superior technology, telepathic unity, and the illusion that resistance was impossible. But resistance had always existed. Small acts of defiance, quiet refusals, subtle sabotage. The subject species had never organized because they thought they were alone in their discontent. Each group believed they were the only ones unhappy with rule. Princess' speech changed something, an engineer named Haywon told him. She said things out loud that we had only thought in the deepest privacy of our minds. She proved that dissent was possible. What about the Emperor? Wu asked. What does he think? He loves his daughter, but he also fears what her words might unleash. The Chancellor is pressuring him to punish both of you severely, to make an example that will discourage others from following your path. Meanwhile, Ambassador Yang was working desperately to salvage something from the disaster. He proposed a modified treaty, a compromise, but High Chancellor Al refused to negotiate with humans at all now. He claimed that humanity was a corrupting influence that threatened the stability of the empire. On the seventh day, and brought more urgent news. The Chancellor is planning something. He's convinced the Elder Council to authorize military action against Earth as a deterrent to other species. They plan to destroy one of your outer colonies as a demonstration of power. Wu felt his blood run cold. When? Within the month, unless something changes. What can change it? The Emperor could overrule the decision, but he won't unless he sees another path forward. That night, Wu couldn't sleep. Thousands of people would die because he had taught a princess about free thought. The weight of it was crushing. Then another message arrived, this time directly from Ambassador Yang. The Festival of Starlight is in 3 days. It's a celebration where all species in the Empire gather. Representatives from every conquered world will be present. The Emperor has agreed to let you speak at the festival as Earth's final statement before they pass judgment on us. This is your one chance to fix what you broke. Don't waste it. Wu stared at the message for hours. How could he possibly fix this? What could he say that would convince an empire to change its mind? He thought about courage, about how she had stood in front of her entire civilization and said no, about how she had been willing to lose everything for what she believed was right. Then he started to write. Over the next 2 days, Wu prepared his speech and smuggled him information about the other species in the empire, their histories, their grievances, their secret hopes. What Wu discovered shocked him. There were 27 different species under rule. Some had been part of the empire for so long that they had forgotten what independence felt like. Others were recent additions, still bitter about their conquest. But none of them were happy. They served because they had no choice, because they were too powerful to resist, because they thought they were alone in their suffering. Wu realized that had been right about something important. The empire was stagnant. It hadn't changed in centuries because change required disagreement, and they had built a society where disagreement was impossible. But he also understood something else. They weren't evil. They genuinely believed they were bringing order and progress to the galaxy. They thought their way was the best way, the only way. They couldn't imagine an alternative. Until now. On the morning of the Festival of Starlight, guards escorted Wu to the massive plaza where the celebration would take place. Thousands of beings from dozens of species filled the space. The atmosphere should have been joyful, but there was tension in the air. Everyone had heard about what happened in the council chamber. Ambassador Yang pulled Wu aside before the ceremony began. Listen carefully. You have one chance to save Earth. Apologize, take full responsibility, beg for mercy. Maybe, if you're convincing enough, they'll spare our colony. What about? Forget about her. She's not your concern anymore. Earth is your concern. Billions of humans are your concern. And what if I don't apologize? Yang's voice dropped to a whisper. Then you'll have condemned innocent people to death because you were too proud to admit you were wrong. The ambassador walked away, leaving Wu alone with his thoughts. The ceremony began with traditional music, sounds that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Then representatives from various species gave speeches praising the empire and expressing gratitude for guidance. It was all carefully scripted, approved words saying approved things. Finally, it was Wu's turn. As he walked to the central platform, he saw for the first time in days. She was standing near her father, wearing royal robes but looking thinner than before. Her glow was dim. When their eyes met, she gave him the smallest nod. High Chancellor Al introduced him with barely concealed contempt. The human will now speak. Let his words serve as a reminder of what happens when order is challenged. Wu stood before thousands of beings from across the galaxy. He held his prepared speech in his hand, the speech where he apologized, where he begged for mercy, where he took all the blame. He looked at that speech for a long moment. Then he crumpled it up and threw it away. "My name is Wu," he began, "and I was sent here to be a bridge between humans, and I was supposed to teach you about my people, our language, our culture, our history." He paused, looking around at all the different species present. "But I learned something during my time here. I learned that you don't need a teacher, you need a mirror." In the crowd, he saw confusion, curiosity, and from some of the subject species, the first spark of hope. "So let me hold up that mirror. Let me show you what I see when I look at this great empire." And with those words, Wu began the most important speech of his life. Behind him, Emperor leaned forward on his throne, listening carefully. Beside the Emperor, Princess smiled. Wu took a deep breath and continued speaking. His voice carried across the plaza, amplified by technology so that every being present could hear him clearly. "I come from a planet called Earth. It's not special. We don't have telepathy. We can't read minds. We can barely travel between stars. By your standards, we are primitives." He saw some nodding in agreement. "But let me tell you about these primitives. We started in caves, afraid of the dark. We fought with sticks and stones. We killed each other over food, over territory, over ideas. We made every mistake you can imagine, and then we made new mistakes you couldn't imagine." Wu walked to the edge of the platform, getting closer to the crowd. "We built civilizations and watched them fall. We created religions that promised peace and used them to wage war. We invented science and used it to build weapons. We reached for the stars and nearly destroyed ourselves in the process. We stumbled, we failed, we argued, we doubted, and that's why we survived." The crowd was silent now, listening. "You see, we humans have something that I've noticed is rare in this empire. We have the right to be wrong. We have the freedom to fail. We have the ability to say no, even when everyone else says yes." High Chancellor Al stood up from his seat. "This is exactly the kind of chaos that threatens our order. The human proves my point with his own words." But Emperor raised a hand, signaling the Chancellor to be quiet. "Let him finish." Wu nodded gratefully and continued. "I know what you think when you look at humanity. You see chaos, disorder, inefficiency, and you're right, we are all of those things." He turned to face the nobles directly. "But you know what we also have: growth, change, evolution, a civilization that cannot say no, cannot truly say yes, a society that cannot fail, cannot truly succeed, Perfection is not a destination, it's a cage. Now he turned to address the representatives of the subject species scattered throughout the crowd. I've spent the last few days learning about all of you. The who were master engineers before the Empire absorbed them. The who had the most beautiful art in the sector before they were taught that only aesthetics matter. The who had a rich tradition of philosophical debate before they learned that questioning leads to punishment. He saw recognition in many eyes. These species had not forgotten what they had lost. 27 different species, each with their own strengths, their own wisdom, their own unique perspective. But you've all been taught to think the same way, to follow the same rules, to become copies of culture. Murmurs spread through the crowd, some angry, some thoughtful. And the saddest part, they genuinely believe they're helping you. They think they're bringing enlightenment, order, progress. They can't understand that in removing your chaos, they've removed your ability to grow. Emperor spoke, his voice heavy with authority. You criticize, human, but what is your alternative? Should we release these species to fight among themselves, to descend into war and suffering? No, Your Majesty, I'm not suggesting anarchy. I'm suggesting partnership, real partnership. Not the kind where one side makes all the decisions and the other side follows orders. Wu pulled out a small device that An had given him. It projected images into the air above the plaza. These are recordings from the past month, conversations that your own people had with me in secret, young who are tired of the old ways. Let me show you what they said. The first image showed An. His voice echoed across the plaza. I've worked with 7 different species in our empire. None of them are happy. They serve us because they must, not because they want to. The next image showed Haywan the engineer. We've stopped innovating. We've stopped creating. We just maintain what we have because change requires disagreement, and disagreement is forbidden. More images followed. Dozens of young, all expressing doubts they had been too afraid to voice publicly. High Chancellor Al's face turned red with anger. These recordings are illegal. They violate the privacy of our citizens. Privacy, Wu said quietly. An interesting word from someone whose species shares all thoughts telepathically. Or do you only care about privacy when it protects the powerful from criticism? The crowd erupted. Some shouted in agreement, others in outrage. Representatives from subject species began whispering among themselves. Emperor rose from his throne and descended to the platform where Wu stood. The entire plaza fell silent. You speak dangerous words, human. You seek to divide us, to turn our people against each other. No, Your Majesty, I seek to unite you, but real unity doesn't come from forcing everyone to think the same way. Real unity comes from accepting differences and choosing to work together anyway. The Emperor studied him for a long moment. And if we give these species freedom, as you suggest, what happens when they turn against us, when they seek revenge for perceived wrongs? Before Wu could answer, Princess stepped forward. She had been silent until now, but she could stay quiet no longer. Father, may I speak? The Emperor looked at his daughter, and the pain in his eyes was clear. You have already said much, daughter. Too much, some would say. Then let me say one thing more. Moved to stand beside Wu. I have studied the histories of every species in our empire. I have read about their cultures, their achievements, their losses, and I have realized something terrible. She turned to face the assembled crowd. We have not built an empire. We have built a museum. We have taken living, growing civilizations and frozen them in place. We have preserved them like artifacts, beautiful and unchanging and dead. Her words hit like physical blows. Even the most traditional looked uncomfortable. Wu taught me about a human concept called biodiversity. The idea that a healthy ecosystem needs many different types of life, each adapted to their own niche. If you remove that diversity, the entire system becomes fragile. One disease, one disaster, and everything collapses. She walked among the crowd, her voice growing stronger. "We have removed diversity from our empire. We have made everyone think like us, act like us, be like us. And we believe this makes us strong, but it makes us fragile. If we ever face a problem that our way of thinking cannot solve, we will have no other perspectives to draw upon. We will be helpless." Returned to stand beside her father. "You asked what happens if we give these species freedom. I will tell you. Some will leave us. Some will resent us. But some will choose to stay, not because they must, but because they want to. And those who choose to stay will be stronger allies than any we have forced into submission." The Emperor looked at his daughter with something that might have been pride mixed with sorrow. "You have become a stranger to me. I don't recognize the person you have become." "I have become myself," replied gently. "For the first time in my life, I am not what the collective shaped me to be. I am what I choose to be, and I choose to stand for change." Wu saw his moment. "Your Majesty, I'm not asking you to abandon your culture or your values. I'm asking you to expand them, to see strength in diversity, to understand that disagreement is not betrayal." He gestured to the crowd. "Look at all these species. Each one has something unique to offer. This engineering genius, this artistic vision, this philosophical wisdom. Right now, you're wasting all of that potential by forcing them to be pale copies of." "What would you have us do?" the Emperor asked, and for the first time he sounded genuinely curious rather than defensive. "Start with the truth. Acknowledge that your empire is built on conquest, not willing partnership. Then give these species a choice, a real choice. Stay and be equal partners with full representation and voice in how the empire is run, or leave peacefully with the technology and resources needed to build their own civilizations." High Chancellor Al stepped forward. "This is madness. If we give them that choice, many will leave. Our empire will crumble." "Then it deserves to crumble," said sharply. "An empire built on fear and coercion is not worth preserving." The plaza erupted into chaos, argued with each other. Representatives from subject species started speaking up, some demanding freedom, others cautiously asking questions. Emperor raised his hands, and silence gradually returned. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries of rule. "I have led this empire for 300 years. I have brought order to dozens of worlds. I have built something that I believed would last forever." He paused, looking at his daughter, then at Wu, then at the assembled beings from across the empire. "But forever is a long time, and perhaps I have been building the wrong thing." High Chancellor Al stepped back as if struck. "Emperor, you cannot mean." "I mean exactly what I say." The Emperor's wings spread wide, a gesture of decision. "We will dissolve the proposed treaty with Earth, not because they have offended us, but because the treaty itself was offensive. It treated them as subordinates rather than equals." Gasps echoed across the plaza. "Furthermore, we will establish a new council. This council will have representatives from every species in the empire, each with equal voice. We will review every law, every policy, every treaty. And we will rebuild this empire on foundations of choice and cooperation, not coercion and control." The Emperor turned to, "My daughter, you have shown me that wisdom can come from the young, and truth can come from unexpected places. You will lead this new council." Then he turned to Wu. "And you, human, who has caused such disruption in my orderly empire, you will serve as an advisor to the council. We will need someone who understands chaos to help us navigate the chaos we are about to create." High Chancellor Al's face had gone pale. "This is a mistake, a terrible mistake, you will see." "Perhaps," the Emperor said calmly, "but it will be our mistake to make. And if we fail, at least we will fail while trying something new rather than succeeding at maintaining something wrong." The festival transformed into something unprecedented. Representatives from the subject species began talking openly about their grievances for the first time in centuries. Young gathered around, asking questions about change and freedom. Even some of the older admitted quietly that they had had doubts about the empire for years. Ambassador Yang found Wu in the crowd. For once, the stern diplomat was smiling. "You did it. You actually did it, though I still think you could have warned me first." "Would you have let me if I had?" "Absolutely not," Yang laughed, "which is exactly why you didn't tell me." 6 months later, Wu stood in a classroom. Not on 7, but on a station specifically built for the new cross-cultural exchange program. The room was filled with students from a dozen different species, including both humans and Princess, who now held the title of Chancellor of the Reform Council, visited the class that day. She sat in the back, listening as Wu taught. "Welcome to Introduction to Comparative Cultures," Wu began. "This class has one simple rule. There are no forbidden words, no forbidden questions, no forbidden ideas." A young student raised his hand. "Teacher, isn't that dangerous? What if someone says something wrong? Then someone else will say something different and we'll discuss both ideas. That's how you learn, not by avoiding wrong answers, but by figuring out why they're wrong." Another student, this one from the species, spoke up. "My grandfather says the old way was better, that we were safer under control." "Your grandfather might be right," Wu said. "Safety is important, but so is freedom, and sometimes you have to choose which one matters more. The point of this class is to teach you how to think about those choices, not to tell you what to choose." After class walked with Wu through the station corridors. "How do you think it's going, the reforms?" "Honestly, it's messy. There are arguments every day. Some species have left the empire. There's been conflict and confusion. But there's also been innovation, creativity, growth. They have already proposed 3 new ship designs that are better than anything they had. They are creating art that combines multiple cultural traditions. It's beautiful chaos." Smiled. "My father asks me every week if I regret what I did, if I wish I had stayed silent." "What do you tell him?" "I tell him that regret is a small price to pay for freedom." They stopped at a large window that looked out into space. Ships from different species moved through the station, working together in ways that would have been impossible just months ago. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had just apologized at the festival?" asked. "If you had backed down?" Wu thought about it. Sometimes, Earth would have joined the empire. Billions of humans would have been safe and protected, and slowly over generations we would have lost what makes us human. No regrets. "Oh, I have plenty of regrets. I wish the process was easier. I wish fewer people were angry. I wish the transition was smoother. But I don't regret the choice itself." Looked at him with those silver eyes that had once seemed so alien. "Thank you, Wu, for teaching me the most important forbidden word of all." "Which word was that?" "No, such a simple word, such a powerful word. The word that makes all other words possible." As they stood there, watching the ships move through space, Wu thought about how far they had come. From a nervous translator trying not to offend anyone, to someone who had helped reshape an empire. It hadn't been easy, it hadn't been safe, but it had been right. And sometimes that was enough.